Mr. Pine lived in a little white house. A white house is fine, but there are 50 white houses all in a line. How can I tell which one is mine? I know. I will plant a tree. Pine tree, Pine's house. That's me. Mr. Green lived next door to Mr. Pine. Gee, that's keen, said Mr. Green. Mrs. Brown lived next door to Mr. Green. Oh, wow, said Mrs. Brown. Mrs. White lived next door to Mrs. Brown. Out of sight, said Mrs. White. The next day, Mr. Pine looked out of his window. He wanted to see his little pine tree. But what did he see? He saw 50 white houses all in a line. Next to each house sat 50 green trees, all of them pine. Oh no, said Mr. Pine. Now how can I tell which one is mine? I know. I will plant a bush. Big bush, pine tree, Pine's house. That's me. Gee, that's keen, said Mr. Green. Oh, wow, said Mrs. Brown. Out of sight, said Mrs. White. The next morning, Mr. Pine looked out of his window. He wanted to see his big bush by his little pine tree. But what did he see? 50 white houses, all in a line. 50 little green trees, all of them pine, and next to each one was a big bush. Oh no! All of the houses still look the same. I know, thought Mr. Pine. I will paint my house. Red? Yellow? Orange? No. Blue? Green? Pink? Let me think. I know. I will paint my house purple. He got paint on his brush and went up the ladder. He worked very hard all day long. He painted very quickly because it was such a big house. Squish, squish, squish. Mr. Pine painted and painted until his whole house was purple. All his neighbors came out to look. No one had seen a purple house before. Gee, that's keen, said Mr. Green. Oh, wow, said Mrs. Brown. Out of sight, said Mrs. White. Oh, no, no, said Mr. Pine. Not 50 purple houses all in a line. But I will paint my house pink, said Mrs. White. Blue is cool, said Mrs. Brown. And I will keep my house all white, said Mr. Green. Now there are 50 white houses, all in a line. There are red ones and green ones. There are yellow ones and pink and white houses too. But there is just one purple house, and that is Mr. Pine's purple house.